Hi, we're back using the employee class, and I realized that I had made a mistake on the last program and I did not have one of my endls with the STD scope and the scope resolution operator, and so if I added that, then I can delete using namespace standard and I don't have to have that in my program. I've got a call in to one of the programmers from Shazam to maybe do a little bit more explaining on that for us. So when I find out more, I will let you know. But what I want to do here is I want to create an array of employees and then be able to edit them and maybe even use like a parameterized constructor, because I did not have a parameterized constructor on the last program. So we've got a few things that we want to kind of clean up. So if I want to add the parameterized constructor, let's kind of do that first. I'm going to need to have an employee, and I need two parameters. One is going to be a string for the name, and one's going to be an integer for the ID. I'm going to copy. I did a triple click, Control C, and then I'm going to place the parameterized constructor immediately after our other constructor. I need to add my scope resolution operator between the class and the name of the method. I need to delete the semicolon, and then go ahead and I will assign first name, and I haven't put my variables in, but I'll name it name, and then employee ID. And if you struggle typing like I do sometimes, copying from up here might be a good idea. And so I'm just going to name a variable new ID and close that off. So I need to include those variables, name, and then the integer coming in is going to be the new ID for the person. So now I have a parameterized constructor. Another thing that's kind of nice to do, and I want to show this to you because I actually practiced it a little while ago and then had some issues, and I'll explain those. It's a good thing for you to see, is I want to go ahead and get an entire employee. This is often done just to go ahead and output everything about a particular object, and in this case my object is employee. I still need to do scope resolution operator, telling it that get employee corresponds with or goes with the employee class. And then instead of a void, I want to return a string, because I want to, it's kind of like first name, getting the first name, I want to return the first name, or getting the ID, I want to return that. Here I want to return the whole entire thing. What I'd like to do is to return basically the something like this, employee colon, and then I'm going to place in the employee's first name, and then quote space ID for that employee, and then plus employee ID. And we'll come back and work with this just a little bit, because I have a feeling that that is not going to work the way that it's written. So, but the idea is that I create this string, and I'm going to then return that string. We'll come back to that here in a few minutes. I just wanted to go ahead and write it here while I was there. I'm going to go back to the driver. Well, hold on. If I'm going, I need to have a prototype for that new method, which was returning a string, get employee parens. It should match up. Yes. Okay, so I got my prototype, I got my parameterized constructor. Now I'm going to go back to main. And here I want to create, instead of just one employee, I want to create an array of employees. So I'm going to say I want all my employees from company A, and I don't know how big company A is, but it's going to be set to a constant size. So I have a constant int size, and my employee company is going to have a size of 3, so I don't have to do a whole lot of typing. And then I want to start working with or filling that array and we like to use the for loop because it's what we call a definite loop. The index is 0, and I like to type out index if I'm writing it. I usually write I just because it takes less time, but in coding I do like to write out index. It's more clear in my opinion. And so I'm start at 0, go to less than size, and then I'm going to have to maybe prompt. I want to create employees, but maybe I need to say something like and because I'm using this other, I need to do std output, and I'm going to say to enter a name and then enter a ID, etc. And I'm going to go ahead and get some of this code set up, and then we'll pick up from here in just a moment or two. In our main, I went ahead and wrote the code in. I declared 2 local variables, one for a name that's a string and one for an ID. So then when I prompted the user inside my for loop, so I declared these variables outside the for loop, but then inside the for loop I used them. I had the person enter a name, then enter an ID, and then this is how we create a new employees. So employee, and I just named it lowercase employee, and I sent the name and the ID, so I'm using the parameterized constructor. And then I assigned company A bracket index that employee. So these 2 lines right here are constructing an employee. And then the next line is where we assign the employee to the array. And so I also cleaned up a little bit of other code. If I remember correctly, I had some std strings I had to fix here on get employee and another place, I believe. So there's a couple std strings that I was missing on there. So if I go ahead and run this, it's going to ask me for an employee. I'll say Bob, ID 234. Next one is Sam, employee ID 456, and a third name is Turtle, and employee ID 987. So I think it ran, but I don't know. And so that's where we're going to go back, and we're going to use this get employee code. And right now it is returning employee not done, and I'll explain that in a minute. But let's just see if I can get that method to run. And actually, I didn't want to do that. I want to go back, and I want to create another for loop. So I'm going to copy this. And actually, it might be best if I were to go ahead and do some modularization. Let me save this before I lose stuff. And I'm going to create a method that's going to have to stop executing the program. So it's expecting me to finish this. I'm assuming I can stop this somewhere down here. I haven't done that yet with this compiler. So I can do something to stop executing the code. I saw that button somewhere, but I don't know where it's at. Actually, it's this red stop at the top of the screen. There we go. If we just read my directions, we would be good. Okay, so I'm going to have a method that just displays employees, and I'm going to send it the company A array and then the size. And so that's my method call. I need to have my method prototype above main, and then in my method prototype I just need to have that it is an employee array bracket, because it's an array, and an integer for size on my prototype. Copy my prototype, Control C, and paste it below main, and here's where I will write my code. Beginning curly brace, ending curly brace, and I'm going to go up here and steal this for loop, copy, paste, And inside the for loop, I'm going to want to output my employee array. Now that was from company A. I don't know what company though. I'm just going to make it a blank company here. And I'm going to declare this variable to be lowercase size. And use lowercase size here because it's not a constant. And then I'm going to step through and just say company. Actually, I'm going to output. And it's going to be company and then bracket index. So it should print each person in the company. Now right now it's not going to print all of them because I don't have that written. If I actually execute it now, then and I input several employees after I fix my errors. So display employee takes in an employee and an integer. Is that on the prototype line? Try it again. I didn't think that was the problem, but I had to check. So where do I call it from? I call it from right here. And int size, employee, company, bracket. It says it's, if I double click on it, it should go to that line of code. I'm not seeing it right now. I have to think about this. Display employees. Looking for typos. Display employees. Oh, it's a void. Let's see if that will take care of this. I had a incomplete prototype line, maybe. And now it's moved on to something else. Size was not declared in this scope. So that means I forgot to use the integer possibly. When we display. Actually, I need to send size right here. It needs to be the uppercase size. I'm getting there slowly. Now we have it. This is interesting. This employee asterisk here tells me that we've got an error with a pointer. It says no match for this operator or operand, and so it doesn't know what to do with this output company index. So in other words, it's not sending back what we expect. And so if we start to go take a look at what getEmployee returns, it's returning a string. So I don't know why it's not liking that. And I have my std : on it. And in main, it says display employees, no match for the operator, less than. So let's take a look. Display employees. Okay, so it's telling us that it can't recognize, or that's because I have to call the method. So it's the company index and then it's get employee. So I did not call the method, so it didn't know what to actually it got the company, but it didn't know what method to run. And so we're getting closer. Every time if I switch over to using this other style, I need to put std in front of indel and cout and string. And now I'm back to entering my data, and I'm making it very short and sweet. So employee not done. So it runs and it executes this method 3 times. I'm getting very close. I just need to go back and address this method in here that says return employee, because I really don't want it to say employee not done. So when I played around with this just a little bit and I tried to execute it, if I click run, it's going to give me this error message that the operand string and int are basically not compatible, that you can't concatenate this string with this integer. So what we have to do is convert it to a string. I did try to use static cast to do that, but then I discovered that we need to use just a toString method, and the way that works, it's in the standard template library, so std : toString lowercase, and then you send in the numeric value after it. And if we execute the program now and we type in Fred, and actually I have some error trapping going on, so you're going to see some duplicate values here, and I enter the ID 345. I entered a test ID to see if it was going to print right there, so it is correctly printing the test ID. And if I enter Wilma, and her ID will be 987, and then I'll enter Barney, and his ID will be 444. And if I run, the code will execute, and it prints Wilma and Fred. I don't have the carriage returns in the right place, the cout or the indels, and I need to delete my test code to clean that up, but it's basically it. What I did there by putting that test code in right here, this actually has a name, and this is called doing what's called an echo check. And so I could echo check and just print to the screen if I wanted to see what those variables were doing. There is a built-in debugger. I haven't played with it at all on this particular machine. But there is a built-in debugger that we could probably try to step through. If I start to run that and I want to see what it's going to do, I'm going to hit continue. I haven't tried to use this at all, so I don't know how the debugger works. But you can type in a variable name maybe over here that you're looking for. So that will be another lesson. This one's gotten kind of long. But I will take this code out right there. And so just to summarize real quick, we took the employee class and we changed the program to do a couple of things. We took and created a getEmployee method so that it returned the whole entire employee. We learned that we had to use a toString in order to cast this numeric value to a string in order to get that to work. We also in main created an array of employees using the correct naming conventions. And we did not modularize this part of the code, but we did modularize displaying the employees, where we had to pass an array and the size. So an extra step would be to go ahead and modularize this part of the code where we actually get the values. There was one more line of code in here. Let me see if I can get an error message to execute here if I run the program this way. And so if I execute and I type in Fred 333, Wilma 555, Barney 888, and it executes enter ID, enter name Barney, and employee, I need to hit a indel at the end. So sometimes you guys get an extra character and you need to kind of flush the buffer or to clear the string input stream. You can use this right here to clear the input stream if that ever happens. Okay, didn't look like we needed it here, but this will clear the input stream. It basically takes anything that's left on that stream and captures it, so then it's a way to capture those extra code. And I have one more thing I want to output or change on my output, and that is every time we print one of these employees, we do an indel. I need to have an indel before we start. So I would put that right before we display. And since I'm using this type of, I need to do std in front of it. And that should wrap it up. It's kind of a long video, sorry about that, but it gives you a good example of using an array with a class.